Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hey there, and welcome back to the show. I am so happy to have you joining me for another conversation on the Impact Farming Show. This week, I'm doing something a little bit different and flashing back to an episode from October 30th, 2024, so last fall. It is with Terry Betker, and it is titled, Do Farm Founders Avoid Transition Planning? If you've been following along on the show, you know we're doing a deep dive into transition planning, the strategy, the techniques, but a lot on the fears, concerns, and worries of each of the generations. So I found myself thinking about this conversation with Terry because it's real, raw, and honest. And in this conversation, he talks about why farm founders stall, why they avoid transition planning. And Terry, he has decades of experience working with farm founders on transition planning. So he's been in the trenches with farmers, doing the hard work to help them pass on their farm legacy. I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation, and that's why I wanted to bring it back to the forefront. So I hope you enjoy, and we'll see you soon. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have the always amazing Terry Betker finally back to spend some time with us. Terry, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine, Tracy. And how about you?
I am doing fantastic. We have had some good conversations here, you and I, on the Impact
Yeah.
Farming Show. I
Yeah.
love it, and we are long overdue, and I'm very excited about this conversation that we're going to have. So, really quick, Terry Betker, you are the CEO of Backswath Management based out of Winnipeg. You can
Right.
expand on all the details. Before we dive in, can you share more about who you are, what you do, and then go back in your history, your experience, the work you've done with farmers to kind of set the scenario? Because your roots are deep in agriculture and deep in transition planning. And our viewers are going to see that during the episode, but I really want you to share more about yourself.
Okay. I'd love to. Tracy, some of my first experiences with farmers in transition was my own personal lived experience as I farmed with my brother and my father. And my father transitioned the farm to my brother and I. And he did it in his unique way. He came out of the shop one day in the summer and he said to my brother and I, I'm retiring. He turned around, walked back in the house. And from then on, it was ours. But he was quite wonderful partner because he never told us what to do. He had opinions, but he wasn't one of those parents who wanted to maintain or have any control. So I had that first lived experience at it. But I did decide to leave the farm in 1992 and I started Backswath. So I've been working with farm families for, well, that's a long time now, Tracy. It's over, even my math says that's over 30 years.
Okay.
And I spent some time as Backswath and then I spent 12 years in MNP as a a leader in director, I guess, of practice development there. And so we designed and defined a lot of what the consulting services were for farms. And I left MNP in 2010. I went back to Backswath and been working with farm families ever since. A lot when early days really wasn't succession planning, transition planning really was a topical uh, consideration. It happened, obviously, but it didn't have the same importance or emphasis as it does now. At Baxwath, we help farmers obviously with transition planning, farm families, and finance, a lot of finance, which runs hand in hand with transition, strategic planning, human resource management. Those are the three primary areas that we work in. We have farms in peer groups. We have younger generation, we call them emerging farm manager peer groups, and then more seasoned peer groups. Oh, there's consultants in Baxwath, in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. That's our footprint. If I may, I have an interesting story about, and I hadn't thought about this till just as we were doing the introductions here, Tracy. One of my early introductions to the formality of what succession planning means to farm families was through Farm Management Canada, and I was a director at Farm Management Canada for a while. It was the old Canadian Farm Business Management Council at that time. Well, we decided to have a conference. So the first conference was in 1999. I'll never forget this. And golly, 98, no, 99 for sure. So people came from different parts of Canada, and we talked about succession planning. So the stats came up there about farmers not having a plan and the average age of the farm, and all that kind of data and statistics stuff was there. It was a great conference. So 10 years later, Farm Management Canada had another succession planning conference, and I attended, and we had the same statistics, the same things were being discussed. Absolutely, exactly. The average age of the Canadian farmer is 57 years old. Whatever the data was, and did it yet one more time 10 years later in 2018, say, maybe not exactly 10 years. And I went to that one too. And we're talking about the same darn stuff, same statistics, same average age of the Canadian farmers, 57 and a half years old, the same struggles, the same, while farmers need to be more proactive in their approach to transitioning ownership and management. And I thought to myself, nothing's changed. It's all the same. But why are we not seemingly making more progress in this whole area? So I just found that progression kind of interesting. It's like the more things change, the more things stay the same. That kind of concept. I just find that kind of fascinating to think back about that, Tracy.
Interesting. And that resonates. And I said to you before we started recording, 7 years ago, I started the show, and that's not near the length of you guys in the industry that have been doing this for a long time. But I started this show mainly, and I didn't say it publicly, Terry, but I'm sure I told you this. I started this show because I had the platform, the media company. I'm like, what can we talk about? Business. But secretly, down my list of reasons I didn't really tell anybody was I started the show because of transition planning, because I've had family experiences of family being torn apart because of lack of planning. I said, okay, this generation can do better. And I've done episodes over the 7 years, went really hard in the beginning, got frustrated. So it's funny that you're saying that, because I'll share my side. And then now I'm looking and I'm seeing it becoming more and more important. The boomers are getting older. Our generation, we're wanting to step in, and I'm feeling the urgency. And I'm wondering the same thing. Why not? And I have a few theories, and I know you're deep into this, but I'm trying to get to the root of why it doesn't change. Just like you observed, why the more things stay the same, whatever the saying is, why doesn't it change? So that's curious that you say that, because I'm on the same journey. I want to get to the bottom of it, because Terry, it's so important. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is so important with each passing day. If we want family farms to stay in business, my goodness, we have enough going against us with weather, with commodities, with everything, with big farms coming in, competing for the land, you name it. We have enough against us that if we don't plan properly, is that farm going to be able to be there for the next generation and the next? So I'm a little bit passionate about it. So I'm excited for this conversation. And one quick thing here, you guys are doing a conference, and I know we'll chat about it throughout, and at the end, you could do a plug too, but it's really focusing on the retiring farmer and supporting them. Okay.
Yep.
And that's important. And then I approached you and said, Terry, we're helping you promote your conference. Why don't we do an episode? Because we really need to hear what's in the brain of the retiring farmer. So I've chatted a lot. If you want to add on anything to that, go ahead. And then after, I want to share one of my theories with you on transition planning.
Okay. I'm gonna be really interested in one of your theories, Tracy. That'll be really good to hear what some of your insights are. I do have a couple of comments to what you just spoke to there. For the retiring farmer, and we'll cover this, I think, a little bit throughout our episode here, and we could talk a little bit about the conference. I had a retiring farmer, that say to me once, we're having a family meeting. Actually, there was the mom and the dad and the daughter and the son-in-law, and it's a really good family, and they've got a really good farm, and the planning process through transition it's moving along. And but the farmer, and I think he was about 69 at that time, he was struggling personally a little bit with what was going on. And he turned to me in the meeting and he said, do you know any other farmers that are experiencing what I'm experiencing? Is there anybody out there that I could talk to? And it just clicked on me. And who do the retiring farmers talk to? Sure. I mean, they've got friends, and they, maybe at the proverbial rink, in the coffee shop, not likely. And in the family, sure, but then that brings up a whole bunch of dynamics that sometimes are uncomfortable. So I just thought to myself, Tracy, who do they talk to? So that's where the idea for this forum, we'll call it. We're not calling it a conference; it's a forum, because we're going to try to create a place where farmers that are nearing or actively in the retiring process or the transitioning process can listen to other farmers, hear what other farmers are thinking, connect with other farmers. Maybe they could make some longer term relationships with other farmers that are living similar situations to which they are. So that's the idea behind the forum that's coming up here in middle of November.
Excellent. Sounds great. It sounds very much needed. Same with that mental health. We talk about farmers being isolated, right? Now, I never thought about that with transition planning. Who are men going to talk to? The ladies will probably talk if there's problems, but the men, and if they don't have the answers, do they really want to talk about it? So that's that same vicious circle, right? I could see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I share my theory?
Yep. Let's go for it.
Oh boy, maybe we'll have to edit this out, Terry, but I have a sneaking feeling, and I think somebody in the audience would go, okay, Captain Obvious, but here's two parts. Do farm founders, and we're being stereotypical here, and if people want to send me hate mail, they can. That's absolutely okay. We're going to go generational. And based on a lot of the farms I know, my in-laws, my grandparents, the man's the farmer, the wife is the wife, she works, whatever it is. We're going stereotypical here. So here is my flat out opinion. The men avoid this subject because they just don't want to leave the farm. Captain Obvious, of course, underneath, I think there's probably no greater desire than to see that farm continue on, I would imagine. And they'll say that out loud. But how is there not a competing feeling underneath saying, I don't want to go? Mm-hmm. This is my baby. This is my life. This is my livelihood. This is my reason for existence. So there's that tug of priorities. They want the next generation to do well, but then they're going, what about me? What next? So that might be Captain Obvious, but I don't hear people talking about that. And I'm a business owner, so I'm just like opening that can of worms and saying it how I would feel. Farm founder, we're a farm founder, my husband and I, but I've also put 17 years of my life into this media company. If somebody wanted to take over from me, I'd have feelings.
Mm-hmm.
There's theory number one.
Well, if we think about things that have changed and things that haven't changed over, the last, say, 30 years of transition planning or trying to understand transition planning, I think you pretty much got right to the essence of the challenge right off the bat in terms of one thing that hasn't changed. And we're talking about people.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about and I think I think the reality is that we have to try to understand what some of the gender differences are in what helps transition along and what doesn't help, or what not doesn't help, what it becomes perhaps a hurdle or an obstacle or a barrier to effective planning. And I can say this because I'm male, and I'm not at the start of my career, Tracy. I'm dead heck closer to the end of my career. And I think for a lot of men, it's not something that we've lived through in the past. It's not something that we easily speak to. And I think it conjures up a lot of feelings, whether we're able to articulate what those feelings are or not, about, you talked about it, vitality. I mean, heck, Tracy, mortality is closer than it's ever been. And then we're asking these guys, and being gender focused here, we're asking these guys to start to tell us how they think and what they feel about transitioning and why they don't want it to happen. And I think Tracy, I think for some of them it becomes almost would have to be a difficult internal contradiction to, on one hand, I hear them speak to me about how proud they are, how confident they are about their children's ability to take over the farm. And at the other side of that discussion is what the next gen and the wife are hearing as to the reasons why this is never going to happen. I think it creates feelings that the guys have difficulty in understanding, in difficulty in processing what they mean, and therefore have difficulty in talking about it to others, because it just opens you up for vulnerability that for the last 40 years they haven't had to do.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most vulnerable conversations a farmer has had in 40 years of farming was with their banker when they couldn't make a payment or when cash flow was tight. Now we're talking about life stuff. So this is tricky.
Okay, I was curious, and I know we're going to chat about that later, maybe want to add to that. But one other thing, because I just really want to get to the root of it, and I don't see a lot of people having this discussion, like the realness behind transition plan, not the tax plan, not the legal plan.
Yeah.
The blanket conversation that we need a plan. We know this. But what are those feelings and what's pulling us in each direction? We're human.
Yeah.
So now on the flip side of that, I'm being stereotypical, and I'll look at my grandparents. So my grandpa, he's passed on right now. So definitely the man, the farmer, ran the show. My grandma was a stay-at-home mom, wife, worked on the farm, 11, 12 children, I think. So we'll go there. And I mean, everybody listening has their own situation, but generations, we're still somewhat there. So we have a situation where the man is, I'm going to call it the dynasty. My grandpa. my father-in-law. They're concerned about building the dynasty, farming, getting out there, making sure that all happens, which heck, that's a task. That in itself is just all consuming. And then as lovely, beautiful women out there, we're moms. So naturally, we love our children. We seek harmony, and taking care of the family relationships is most important. And sometimes, probably to the wife, I would say more important than the farm. They want to make sure everything's okay with the family and that they get together at the next Christmas holiday, right? And we all know families where it's gone bad. So I see the conflict in the founder and his desire to pass it on, but his fight against that. And then I see the dynamics in relationships. And maybe if the farm mom, farm wife, whatever we want to call, I'll go with my grandma, farm wife, might not have that say or that pull on the farm because that was the generation. So there's two people with different concerns and different roles in the family and the farm. I'm thinking the men aren't going to want to plan. They're going to want to stick their head in the sand naturally. I would feel the same way. If somebody coming for my media company, I'd be like, doo-loo-loo. But the women are like, we need to do this or the family is going to be torn apart. And the man's like, got to get the crop in, or we won't have a farm. Doesn't want to deal with that. So I recently read, and I'm curious on your experience, Terry, because you worked with a lot of farm families. When a farm comes to you, is it mainly the man or the woman that come? Because I heard 9 out of 10 times it is the mom, farm wife, the woman farmer that leads the process. She says, enough, we need to plan, and then just kind of grabs the reins and does this. What are your thoughts on that? And from here, you can talk away.
Well, definitely more often than not, it's either the mother or the daughter or a daughter that contact us or um, want to explore what transition planning's about. So you're right on there. I don't know that I have stats to quote on that, but definitely it's more the woman, the mother or the daughter in the family that is the catalyst for causing or getting discussions underway for transition planning. Um, one of the I so there are some families that seemingly move through this process quite easily, and for others it never happens. Like that's the extreme. They just can never get it going, and it never happens. And then there's all the bad outcomes that we hear about. Um, I think one of the differences between the ones that seem to be more easily worked through than the others is that in those situations, Tracy, the retiring farmer, the man, has identified something that he's working towards, he's moving towards. If there's an absence of what is it that the male, the 70-year-old, is working towards, then for that person, it has to be all into that area where I'm just giving everything up.
Yeah.
So if you can get to the point where identify with the farmer, with the father, with the husband of what is it that they're working towards, then that oftentimes I think makes the transition planning process more smooth. So you got to think about that a little bit, because the reality of it is they are letting go of something they've done for 30 and 40 years. So we can't turn a blind eye to them and say, well, you aren't, there is something that you're giving up, that there is change underway, but here's what you're working towards, or help them to understand what it is that they're working towards, or moving towards, not working towards, moving towards. And then I'm sure there's people out there listening and saying, okay, yeah, exactly. But my dad or my husband has nothing outside the farm that he enjoys at all. And there's, I don't know, thousands of them out there that have nothing else that they could even begin to talk about what it is that they might be looking forward to. So I've got some ideas on ways in which we can redefine
Hmm.
roles within the farm that maybe could create a best of both worlds. Uh, but I think this is a discussion um, that we tend to, in the planning process, we tend to try to talk with the families in the now. But what we're talking about is future events. I mean, we've got 10 and 15 and 20 years ahead for some of these uh, farmers that are moving on from active farming. And so it's not like they have to decide today that, oh, this is what I'm going to do next year. We have to help them to work towards that process.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's what a lot of farmers get scared about too. Call myself an
Well,
in-betweener age-wise, and
yeah,
I could feel the fears of the older generation because they're like the young ones chomping at the bit here and they want in. Do some of them think that they're getting kicked out right away versus it's new man we're what do you call it in the corporate world? We're training up the new
yeah,
management.
yeah,
Training up. It's not they're
yeah,
coming in to take over the farm. We're going to set your career,
yeah,
farm founder, and then we're bringing in the next generation and mentoring them,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, we could use all those words, but the fact of the matter is the farmer is in his world, it's what he's leaving, not what he's moving towards. You know, I don't think, and I don't have any perfect answers for this, Tracy, but I think fear is something that we should talk about for a second here,
Hmm.
because fear is not an empowering emotion to work from. And so if there's fear in what the future is, or there's unknowns, then that's gotta be a barrier to wanting to talk about something here. So we have to, I think, try to think about it as not as fear, but as normal transition in someone's life, and try to get them to think about it in terms of not being afraid of the change, but enabling the change, and how can we benefit from the change. I think that's a more. I think what goes along with that is that where we can, we need to validate what their feelings are, uh, and through that support them in the change. Um, I think we get better outcomes if we're coming from confrontation and fear and small f failure in a way. Then those are all reasons why the transition won't proceed, why it won't be successful.
Ooh, I'm glad that you named fear. I think that's right up there at the top. Fear of the future, fear of the finances, fear of what to do, fear of not having anything.
Tracy, even fear of now, we have to spend more time together as a couple. You know,
Oh,
how do we figure out that dynamic that has not been our reality for 40 years? Yeah.
fear of getting kicked out of your house. And let's name
Fear
it
of
back
getting,
to that
yeah,
generation. The
yeah,
wife, the grandma, I'll call it my grandma. They always talk about them wanting to move into town to let the kids move into the big farmhouse. Well, grandpa is going, wait a minute, this is my house. I don't want to leave.
yeah, yeah.
Fear,
It's it's
fear,
it's
fear.
it's one of the things that we want to do at the event is have the farmers hear others, and but we're also hoping the wives come, the spouses come, the mothers come,
Mm,
because then they could talk to other mothers and other women that are in similar situations to they are, and maybe not get ideas about what and how to go about things, but at least to hear that there are others living in some of the same challenging times as they are. And that's just helpful.
oh, yeah.
I think if you're alone, if you feel alone in a world with troubles that you can't get your head around, to be able to talk to others that are having the same trouble, that's gotta be helpful.
Yeah, I love the idea that you're doing that because truthfully, I think these are the conversations that's going to move succession transition ahead faster than, well, let's do some tax planning for it's this right here.
Yeah.
Fear and not knowing you're alone because again, we chatted about that I think a little bit before is we talk about the mental health of farmers because founder is out on the tractor by himself, stewing in our thoughts all the time. And we're thinking the same thoughts, same worries, same things all the time. And then mom, if she farms or she's in the house or works, whatever the case is, we're alone in the silo of our existence. So if you can put, and I've had that happen, that female chat, right? When you end up sitting across from somebody and just hearing that you're not the only one dealing with something, I always equate it to that moment where you kind of get goosebumps and then your shoulders just drop. You go, oh, we're not alone.
We're not
Right?
alone. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had that a few times in different times where you open up to somebody about fears, concerns, and then that right there takes that dark cloud from over your head and you go, oh, okay, we're not alone.
Yeah.
So let's start maybe looking for solutions or talking about it, right? Because I think there's also maybe even, ooh, Terry, you're getting me all female here with the emotional words. But is there, and I think of it too, would there not be a little bit of shame? I hate that word, but if we want to call it shame, the farm founder's like, I know I need to plan for the next generation. But personally, I don't want to face my immortality. I don't want to leave the farm. And I'm stuck here in my fears and my concerns and my desires. Do you not feel a little bit of shame, guilt for not wanting to plan a little bit better, right? We're humans. We get all those emotions and they're hard. And especially if you sit in them by yourself.
Yeah.
Ooh, those were some deep, feely words.
Yeah, they were, and I'm sure that there are people that are or will listen to what you're describing that will identify with that. It's like you said, we're talking about a farm and we're talking about farm family and the business aspects of that. But at the end of the day, right back to where we started, we're talking about people.
Yeah.
And people have feelings and there's relationships and it's it's both joyful and challenging at the same time.
Yeah. Amen to that. So we chatted about the resistance that farmers face and the role identifications. I wanted to kind of open those can of worms because I think those were important. You touched a little bit on how we can help founders move through this. So is there any of those areas that you want to touch on a little bit more? Because then I want to see if you want to add your spin on that because I know you said you're in a time where retirement is taking some space on your brain and what your thoughts are on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
take that anywhere that you want or that you don't want to. You don't have to go there, but floor is yours.
Yeah. If those thoughts come into my brain, if I feel them coming in there, I just go stick my head in a cold bucket of water and they soon go away so that I'm good for a while again.
There you go. And
Yeah.
now we have the rest of the story where
Yeah. Yeah.
why transition planning doesn't happen. It's
Yeah.
natural. It's just so natural. We're
Just so
so,
natural. If you deny, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
not happening.
Not happening. But I will. I actually I will, Tracy. Back to the roles. I find that really, really interesting because we've spent time at Backswath. We spent time a lot of time with farm families. And one of the, in transition, as we all know, is there's two parts to it. There's the ownership and the management. And I'm going to say most farmers struggle mostly with the management transition, not the ownership transition. And then I'm not trying to minimize
Mm,
the feelings around ownership, but it's the wheelbarrow in the backyard in the dark has to do with management. And I think that's where a lot of the challenges are. Um, so one of the ideas So one of the ideas we came up with, and we've had some good traction with it, was trying to create a role for dad or the father as he starts to move away from the more traditional roles of managing operations, finance, and marketing, for example. So, and this has to do with the same thing about getting him to think about what he's giving up, but what he could be working towards.
Mm.
And so, and you could describe it differently, but we refer to it as creating on a farm an executive management committee. So it's like a quasi board, but it's not a board. It's just family members that um, have management responsibilities. And so, for it to be, I think, as effective as possible. Um, the family benefits by having some formality attached to it. So it has a charter. And the reasoning behind it is that it's not just some ad hoc, well, let's try this. It's intentional. It's
Mm.
intentional. It's intentionally designed to create a structure and a role that will allow dad to carry on and have input, active input in some of the major decisions that are going on, like that management committee does. And then the actual day-to-day management is now the daughters or the sons or the son-in-laws or however that works. So we present that, and the farmers that that try that, they have certain agendas, and there's the charter, as I said, and there's um, they define what it is that this executive management committee is going to focus on, and the dad is the chair. He's the leader of it. And then in that way, there's still, I think, a degree of worth attached to it. He can talk to his buddies about, well, on our farm, we've created this management structure, and you can have whatever you want to call it, executive management committee, however you define it. But yeah, I'm leading that right now. And then, if you think forward a little bit, if the farm's kind of progressive and it's got some ideas about a bit of a diverse investment or something, that committee could lead it or champion that, and he could be the leader of that. So it identifies some purpose to him in his role going forward.
Terry, I like that you said meaning, because I don't know if you've observed this. Two parts to this. If you've ever seen somebody retire, everybody's all excited and then they retire and it's fun for 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they slide health-wise, they slide mentally.
Yeah.
It's no fun anymore. Why? Because we lose our meaning. So
Yeah.
I love how you said giving dad, the founder, a role and meaning, instead of it's okay, we don't need you, you're gone. Just disconnect from this farm that you feel is like your baby. He knows he's still there and needed. And then if you look at psychology, which I love, I think our deepest need as a human is to belong and feel and have meaning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Other than that, roles, on oftentimes the retiring farmer will carry on in actual, well, the common ones are marketing and finance would be the common ones that they like to keep their involvement in. We have an idea about how to manage that dynamic, and because there's somebody else in the business that's wanting to take on those responsibilities. The son and the daughter, however that is. So what we suggest to the farmers is to run what we call parallel systems.
Oh.
So it's a way of creating an internal, I guess, mentorship type approach where it's just father daughter. Let's go father daughter, and then you run 2 marketing programs. You run 2 QuickBooks. You run 2 accounting or record keeping systems. and it's intentional. So there's duplication of effort, but it's good because it gives dad still the opportunity to stay involved, and then actually teaching and helping the child, the next gen, to pick up those skills. And if you run parallel systems, then you can compare the two of them and see how the each one is performing, and if there's anything that's glaringly in need of attention, then we've got the two systems. We haven't lost all the data. I find that with farmers that I talk to can be quite effective.
I think that's clever because, well, good old 4-H motto, learn to do by doing, right?
You learn to do by doing. And if they learn to do by doing and they've got one QuickBooks or one ag expert, then they're stepping on each other's toes. And someone's putting the entry in and someone's doing this. So if they run the parallel systems and compare them every month or however frequently they do it, then they're not on each other's toes.
Yeah.
The other, if I may, the other, well, I don't talk about this very often because nobody likes to talk about it. But if there's a sudden illness or there's a sudden death, then we actually have the two systems, and it's not like we're going cold turkey and to pick up, where dad has had to step aside.
Oh, that's
There's a
clever.
benefit there too.
That's clever, Terry. And thinking back, and I think this is the progression of life and just adulting and getting real wisdom versus book learning. I took ag diploma at U of M, so I'm an Aggie. And they teach you the bookkeeping program. Maybe I'm slow. I'll throw that out there. Maybe I'm slow, but school's great. You get the certificate, you learn, you meet people, all the great things there. But a lot of that stuff that I learned was just like floaty knowledge. Like it didn't really have a lot of sense until you get to the farm and you actually get in your own numbers. You get in your own farm, you make your own mistake. Like it wasn't real until it was real. So I think it's almost unfair. And I love that, how you say that. And especially with financials, like that's a huge learning curve. I know I had good mentorship from my partners on that. Learning to read financials and print that out and make decisions based on that, that's a skill. And school, and again, maybe I'm slow. I'm not an accountant type number person, but you don't get the numbers until the numbers are real. So if you have dad doing the main books or mom, whoever it is, and then upcoming generation playing with those numbers and going, oh, I get it. Okay, I get it. That's huge.
Yep.
Huge. Nice.
Can I segue, because we started talking about finance? Can I just kind of probe into another area about finance that I think is, when we talked about what's changed and what hasn't changed,
Mhm.
the challenges around money haven't changed, but the money has changed. The amount of money has changed. And I think that, well, I'm going to talk about that kind of money as wealth.
Yeah.
And farmers in farm families in Western Canada haven't really had to think in terms of wealth on their farm until the last, 5 years, maybe 10 years at the most. Southern Ontario, Europe, they've had generational wealth in their families forever. But we are there now in Western Canada. And I think that one of the things that farm families are going to have to pay more attention to, or focus more of their attention on, put it that way, when it comes to transition planning, is understanding wealth. So we have, and I'll use an example. So we have software program called Farmcaster. It's a financial analysis program. And one of the features that we have in it is the ability to measure wealth and then model it forward. So if a farm family is listening to our discussion, Tracy, they might want to think back and try to calculate, and they will be able to do this, what their wealth or their net worth was 10 years ago, figure out what it is today, and then base it on some average earnings. Okay, maybe the average 5 years of earnings, or pick an assumption, pick an average appreciation rate for land, and then roll that forward 10 years or 20 years, generationally 20 years, and then model how much wealth the family's going to have at that point in time. Now, I'm going to give you two real examples. So one was a large farm I did this with in southern Alberta. And it is a really, really cool farm, a lot of irrigated land. So the land value is like this, right? And a mother and a father, two sons and their wives, and a daughter and her husband. So there's 8 people around the table. So they wanted to look at this wealth discussion and probe into it. And we used the program. We identify with them what their current net worth was, and then we rolled it forward 10 years. Now, this is something really interesting because dad in that family was beyond proud of the fact that their current net worth is about $40 million. And when they modeled it, there's something that's really important here, Tracy. When they modeled that forward in 10 years, given the appreciation on land that's been happening in that part of the world and the other assumptions, and we're not trying to be, we're trying to be realistic in that, their 10-year future net worth, wealth, was $104 million. So we went around the table. And I asked this question, say, what does that mean to you? Well, there's a great opportunity for dad in him transitioning out of the business to identify with what he has been able to build. So that was a proud moment for him. So, and then we could focus some of that discussion on see what the story is here, or what you've created, and how is this wealth going to benefit the family 10 and 20 years down the road. So that's not what he's giving up. That's what he's built to what the family is working towards. So that was one super important learning. The mother, who is challenged with, the dad and the transition and all that, her husband and the transition and all that, she's really proud because she's been there and supported him all the way along. And it's her children that are important to her that are going to reap the benefits of what she and her husband built. That's to celebrate. Nice. The dynamic that's troubling in that is one of the daughters-in-law said that wealth didn't mean anything to her because she couldn't identify anything in what was tangibly hers. So if we're talking about transition and we're focusing on the senior person leaving the business, we have to try to remember that we also have to understand what the feelings of the incoming generation are at the same time. So I found that to be really interesting. And I'm mindful of the time, but I'll quickly talk about then a Manitoba farm that we did this with. And it was a farm that was a third of the size of the Alberta farm. And this is a husband and a wife in their mid 40s, maybe, late 40s. And in that business, they rolled their 5,000 acre farm forward and modeled the wealth 20 years out, and it was nearly $50 million. So their children are going to come into that what would you call it? That financial legacy reality.
Yeah.
So I think to understand wealth is important for the transition process in general, Tracy, but I think we can also use it then in a way to celebrate what mom and dad have accomplished and use that as not a catalyst, but a way to write the story. I understand legacy. I don't think legacy to most farmers means anything. I don't know that they really. If you say, well, what do you want for a legacy? I often get a lot of blank looks. But if I ask them what's the story that you want written,
Mm-hmm.
then their eyes light up.
Mm-hmm.
And now what we're talking about is the story that's been written till now, and then they get the father and the mother, but the fathers who we're focusing some of this discussion on, the father gets to um, help write the story that's going to evolve. And I've had quite positive comments back from the 65, 70-year-old farmers uh, about reframing what it is they're doing and wanting the story forward. And what's then getting told a generation from now as to what dad did, granddad did, grandfather did, is really cool.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's so easy to get caught in now. I'm thinking of a farmer who had a terrible farm transition experience back in the day. And he said, I'm never going to do that to my kids because he didn't want that to be a story. Sure enough, that's what he did to his kids.
Yeah,
He,
yeah,
he
yeah.
didn't do any
Unfortunately, yeah,
better. And
yeah.
that's what he did to his kids. There's the story he wrote. And if you look at it, it almost gets you out of yourself because when you're living yourself, you're in the day to day. But I like that example about the wealth, like that's unbelievably powerful. But when you say, what's the story you're writing? It almost forces you, like I feel myself sit up a little bit and go, oh, this is bigger than me, right? Especially if you have kids and grandkids.
Yeah.
What are my grandkids going to be saying about me when I'm gone? When you think of it that way, and I don't think we do. I don't know. I don't think, and I'm younger yet, but I don't think that we sit there and stew about our story. But if we think about that, and I love how you say that as the onus to do that battle that we're doing within. We want to stay on the farm and we want to keep it, but we know we need to. What's the story you're writing is almost that onus, that thing that can drive them forward to doing those steps, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's two amazing ways I've never thought about it. Terry,
You
this,
know, yeah. Yeah, no, it's different ways that we can help the retiring farmer come to terms with changes that are happening in his life.
I I don't want to ask you about your personal thoughts because I've asked enough feely, touchy questions. I brought out my female side and spoke about those emotions, which I think are real. But gosh darn it, I could feel for the founding generations of farms.
Yeah.
I could feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. I I spend I I'll give you a glimpse, Tracy, um, in our forum in Regina.
Mhm.
I'm going to be one of the keynote presenters, and I'm going to talk about my observations from working with farmers, but I'm also, I think, going to do a little introspection on where am I at, what's going on in my life, or what am I thinking, and I'm going to start my presentation this way, Tracy. I'm going to put up two caricatures. That's my idea. One will be a picture of a man, and one will be a picture of a woman. It could be myself, my wife. And the wife's going to say, well, are you thinking about retirement? And the man, or I'm going to put my face up there and going to say, yeah, I think about it. And well, what do you think about? Well, I don't know. Well, you must think about it. You must have some ideas. Yeah, but I don't know. And then, well, are you going to retire? Sure, I'm going to retire. When? I don't know. Well, have you thought about what you might want to do in retirement? Yeah. Well, what are you going to do? Well, I don't know. And my reality is exactly that. I think the great majority of farmers out there would identify, the men would identify with that. I don't know, Tracy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've done this for 35 years almost, and and it's the best thing ever. Like farming, the best thing ever is to work with farmers. If you're doing it in your business, so at some point, I'm going to have to get past the I don't know and form my transition plan. So yeah,
The
it's
human
tricky. It's
experience.
tricky times. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think the stuff that, well, sounds like you're off to a great start with your forum. And if you open it up that way, I think that's the best icebreaker I've ever seen, and get straight to the point. Because everybody will be like, oh, it's not just my relationship. Oh, it's not just me going through that. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that. It's not
Yeah.
easy. It's not easy when we look and we, like you opened earlier, Terry, and you said you went to the conference 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, no progress. Am I surprised? You look at that perfect storm of desires of the different generations and all the obstacles. I would say this is one of the easiest things to stall on.
Yeah. The advisors that work with farm families have championed first succession planning, and now more commonly is referred to as transition planning, have championed that for 20 years
Yeah.
and or more. And if I think about this, I drive quite a bit to see farm families, and I think as I drive, and I think, Kelly, if I'm a farm family and I'm hearing again, have you started your transition plan yet? Like, everybody knows this.
Yeah.
So Tracy, you and I and others, we need to think of different ways that we can carry this discussion forward. And that's what we're trying to do with that event. It's not a conference, it's a forum. And we're going to try to get, you know, farmers and their spouses to come and hear what others are thinking about and listen to some speakers. And we've got well, a lot of people will know Roberta Galbraith is speaking. She's going to talk from the perspective of the retiring mother,
Okay.
and what Neil, her husband, is living through. So we also have Brittany Dempsey, and Brittany is the daughter. She and her husband farm. They're the next generation of the family farm, and she's going to speak about watching and observing what her father and mother are going through in their transition. And then, of course, we have our super keynote speaker, Cynthia Beck. She comes from a farm. She's a clinical psychologist. She's done a lot of speaking, especially in Saskatchewan. And so she's going to be there for the whole 2 days. So we're really, really looking forward to it. I encourage anybody listening that wants to come and participate in this. Is a forum like this, I don't believe has ever happened before. So this is a first time, and we're quite excited about it.
What a great idea. And I've said it a few times throughout, I think these conversations and a forum like that, that'll actually move the needle. You're right. You need a transition plan. Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
What does that mean? We know
yeah.
this.
Tracy, I could talk to you about this all day, and you know that. So,
Terry, I love this. I am so glad we had the idea to do this. The talking from the retiring farmer, like the founder, their perspective is important. We're
yeah,
always talking, and I mean, I'm younger, and you talk about the next generation wanting to come in and their desires. Is anybody having conversations about what's going on in Farm Founder and why this might be holding up the transition process? So I think this conversation's been brilliant. Thank you.
well, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and do things like this with you, Tracy. Every single time we do it, it's just a highlight for me. So thanks.
No, you're a gem. Right back at you, Terry. I will put details of the upcoming event in the show notes. So if you're interested, have a look there. And Terry, if people want to connect with you back swath, I'll put some details in the show notes as well. But any final parting words for our audience, and then we'll wrap up?
All right. No.
Nope.
Well, I said no, and then I'm going to say yes. for farm families listening, be proud of what you do.
Ooh, beautiful. Yep. Short, sweet. That's powerful. Thank you, Terry. You are a fountain of knowledge. I love our conversation. So thank you for coming and spending your time with me, Terry. Thank you very much.
Be well. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys in the audience, if you love this as much as I did, like it, share it, and get it out there, because I think every farm founder needs to hear what Terry just said. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.